boy with one leg gives up his seat for an old lady on bus. What she did later left him stunned. The elderly woman was confused about whether getting on a crowded bus was ideal. But it was the only option as the next bus was scheduled 30 minutes later. She was 80-year-old and was out of energy. Her knees weren't that strong to remain standing throughout the bus journey to the fair, but part of her was hopeful. Maybe someone will make room for this old woman, Alice thought as she entered the bus. After all, the monthly fair was the only time she got to see other people in the entire month. She was instantly overwhelmed looking at the crowd on the bus. People were so immersed in their phones that they overlooked the 80-year-old stumbling by, searching for an empty seat. "Ma'am, you can have my seat." Alice looked at the boy smiling at her with warmth. She was so astonished by the boy's compassion that she didn't notice him struggling to get up from the seat. Others stared as they saw the boy lift himself onto a crutch and step into the aisle. A child from the back yelled, "Mom, Dad, look at that boy's foot." That's when Alice saw it and was touched. Surprisingly, the boy who had chosen to give the old lady his seat only had one leg. "Oh, I didn't realize, child." Alice patted the child on the head. "Please, sit down." "No, ma'am, I'm perfectly all right. You need to give those feet a rest. Please, I insist." Alice was so moved by the boy's unpretentious kindness. However, she wanted to politely refuse again, but the boy was already waiting to see her settle in the seat. "All right, but only if you agree to tell me everything about you, young man," said Alice. It was a long ride to the fair, but for Alice, it was a heartbreaking moment as she heard every single phase of the boy's tragic life story. "My name is Sean. I live with my mother and grandmother in Ohio. You look a lot like my grandma, Sue, but she's been bedridden for the past 3 years. And what does your mom do?" Alice asked. "Everything, really. Mom works as a waitress during the day, then comes home for lunch and rushes to the mall, where she works at another cafe and even caters birthday cakes. Ever since Dad passed away, she has never stopped worrying. Like today, when I offered to help with prepping for a birthday party this evening. But Mom stuffed a few dollars into my hand and booted me out of the house, telling me to go have a childhood instead." Sean and Alice giggled, but Alice was lost in thought, imagining the hardships of his mother's life. "Your mom sounds like a fierce woman," Alice smiled. "She reminds me of my younger self. You better listen to her because there's no winning. My dad would tell me the same thing, and he was the strongest man I ever knew. He loved her so much." For the first time in the conversation, Sean choked. Alice tried to calm him by holding his hand. "Come on, our stop is almost here." Alice and Sean helped each other get down and walked to the fair. They had a fun time at the fair. After 2 hours of roaming around, they both were exhausted as they took the bus ride back home. Sitting next to Sean, Alice couldn't stop thinking about his kind gesture and his tragic life story. Something about this child's story felt personal, and Alice wasn't ready to just leave it as a chance meeting. "Sean, can you give your mother a call?" Alice asked. "Tell her an old woman you met on the bus has invited you to her home for tea and a slice of pie." Sean was surprised and smiled at the thought of warm pie. He told his mom about meeting Alice, and his mother happily gave him permission. During the time, Sean spoke openly about his father for the first time in months. "He was my hero. He was my catch partner. He was my greatest cheerleader." Alice held the boy's hand as he opened up. "Dad and I were driving home from my basketball match. I still remember how angry and disappointed I was because my team had lost. It was a minor match. It meant nothing. But at that moment, I didn't know I was wasting my last conversation with my dad by throwing tantrums. I didn't think we were minutes away from a car crash that would claim my leg and take away my hero. Instead, I was busy being mad at him. You should have bought me those new shoes, Dad. I really needed them today, I told him. Sean still remembered how calmly his dad responded to his immature hissy fit. Son, the blessing wasn't in having those shoes. The blessing is having 2 feet, a focused mind, and the ability to practice until you get better. Alice was speechless at the powerful words of the man she never had the chance to meet. Sean struggled to hold back his tears. Do you wish he was here to talk you through your challenges? Sean was surprised that Alice knew exactly what he was feeling. He let his guard down for the first time since his father's funeral and cried. Alice tried to hide her tears as she consoled the young boy. For a few weeks after their meetup, Alice couldn't stop thinking about Sean. It made her crave to talk to her own son, who hadn't visited her in a year. She tried to call him repeatedly, but it didn't surprise her when the calls went unanswered. That's when she decided to follow what her heart was telling her to do. It was a bright sunny Sunday, and that's when Sean heard a knock on the door. Mrs. Dale. It was the same old woman he had given up his seat for on the bus ride to the fair. Alice waved and smiled at Sean, noticing his mother approaching the door. Hello, Sean. And hello, you must be Sean's mom. Alice shook hands with them. I just decided to show up and surprise you today. I was hoping to share some news, Alice said, looking at the mother and son's curious faces. You don't know this, but I am the owner of the biggest chain of malls in the city. I didn't come from a family of wealth, and so, when I heard about you, Sean's mom, I was reminded of a younger me. I was about your age when I lost the love of my life, too. And at that moment, while I was struggling to hold my life together and create a life of comfort for my little boy, I wished there was some miraculous helping hand that would lift us from years and years of struggle. Now my son has his own luxurious life, and if he isn't bothering to reach out to me, he must be doing well for himself. Sean's mother was moved by the disappointment in the elderly woman's eyes. I thought about whether it would be all right to give away all my wealth, my big home, and my comforts to someone else. I doubted whether anyone in today's world, including my own son, still understands the value of kindness and the importance of family, until I met your son. And so, I've decided to become the miraculous helping hand I once prayed for. I want to help you rebuild your lives. Sean, I want you, your mother, and your grandma to move into my 3-storied house and make it your home. Move in with me, and I will provide for your needs. Get a fresh start, and yes, in the process, I will selfishly take whatever feelings of belonging and love I receive in return. That's all I want anymore, nothing else. It took some convincing, but Sean's mom finally agreed to give her little family a fresh start. Alice paid for the most modern version of an artificial leg for Sean, giving him newfound confidence and freedom. Alice relived the joy of having a loving family, not just through Sean and his mother but also through his grandmother, who became Alice's best friend. Sean's beautiful new home, which now included 2 beloved grandmothers, was blessed with many moments of love, laughter, and togetherness. When it was finally time for Alice to go, she left him one last miraculous helping hand, the house worth $1.7 million.